Welcome to the fourth part of Redefining Normal, the textual and visual rhetoric of women with disabilities, a project on the intersectionality and representation of female bodies with disabilities in the forms of textual and visual rhetoric with still image advertising. If you haven't seen the other videos and all of those words sounded like I was chewing up a dictionary, you should watch the introduction first, as well as the language and history videos if you find historical context and research interesting. You can find those links in the description. My name is Hannah Sincavage, and I'm a senior writing and linguistics major at Georgia Southern University with a concentration in rhetoric and composition and a minor in economics. Similar to the last video, we're going to be rhetorically analyzing images of females with disabilities. The difference is today we are looking at pieces of advertising that were created and distributed within the last 10 years. These pieces represent our current culture and come from different countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia. In the first video, we contextualized disability itself, as well as really set up the theory that we're going to use for this project. First, intersectionality is the discrimination that occurs because of intersecting identities. We also discussed the ideas of the normal and normalization, which is society's rejection of anything that they perceive as abnormal. Feminist theory of role-taking and patriarchal power have an effect in society, and visual rhetoric is finding meaning in images in their purpose, composition, and context. You can find that video here, or there's a link in the description. In the second video, we learned that the language and rhetoric used to describe and name disability has changed over time because each term becomes inherently negative. This negativity is derived from the way we feel and think about disability. But disability is not the only identity that affects rhetoric, as we saw with Bethany Hamilton and Mama Cox. You can find that video here or through the link in the description. In the third video, we finally saw some representation of bodies with disabilities through the forms of advertisements at the turn of the century for freak shows and charities. The women and children in those advertisements were exploited for both their disability and gender, something that, as we saw, still happens in our current society. This video can be found here or through the link in the description. Please recall that according to the United States Census Bureau, 1 in 5 Americans are disabled, and more than 375,000 Americans become totally disabled every year, meaning that at least one major life activity is limited. So chances are that what we see today directly affects either you or someone you know, and if it doesn't right now, it could in the future. There is also no definite separation between disabled or abled, even though some people tend to make this distinction, but these states exist on a continuum, and the choices that we make in regards to representing disability directly affect us all and how disability is considered in our society. Today, I will show you society's representation of disability in ads for Nike's Air Jordans, Asos, and Target. All these advertisements feature disabled women and at least one other person. I chose athletic wear for the overall theme of this video because it's one of the only types of clothing that uses models with disabilities at least semi-regularly. It also allows us to look at an important aspect of disability, athletics and sports. Intersectionality, or the events that occur because of intersecting identities, is clear in the diverse bodies that are used, which is great, but as you will see, they can do better. We're going to look at the company's histories with disability representation, then actually rhetorically analyze and create meaning from the advertisements. Sincavage et al. Explain that every time we see an advertisement, it has an impact on our consciousness or subconsciousness, even if we think it doesn't. So these images that we see today have an effect and contribute to society's overall opinion and both bodies with disabilities and disability in general. First is the advertisement for the AJ 2009 for Nike's Air Jordan featuring April Holmes from 2009. Air Jordan specifically is not very representative of a disability, as this is the only ad campaign with Holmes in it, but Nike has been making great headway in terms of incorporation and representation. In June of 2019, Nike installed a mannequin with a disability in their Nike Town store in London. The back leg has a prosthetic. This mannequin normalized the disabled body by putting it right next to mannequins without disabilities. Sarah Kim verifies this inclusivity, reporting, "Sportswear brands notoriously only feature able-bodied mannequins, so the fact that a major company like Nike has promoted the visibility of disabled bodies is a major step forward." Nike also signed the first athlete with a disability for a pro contract in October 2018. Justin Gallegos was born with cerebral palsy, but discovered his passion for running in high school, writes Gleason. The representation of bodies with disabilities is consistent across time, and April Holmes is not being used as a token or one attempt at securing the disabled market or just a ploy for profit. April Holmes is an incredible human being herself, though. According to the Team USA website, Holmes is a 4-time Paralympian and has won 3 medals. She had always loved track and field, but her passion for it was reignited after a train accident resulted in the amputation of her left leg below the knee. Being an athlete made her want to keep living. Holmes' strength and endurance led her to being the only Jordan brand-sponsored athlete and inspiring the AJ 2009 sneaker. Let's check out that advertisement and unpack it. We have 2 people, April Holmes, who inspired the shoe design, and Michael Jordan, who owns the brand. Both are dressed in black, making the effect seem cohesive overall. They are modeling the 2 different color designs of the shoe. Black, varsity red, white on Holmes, and white, metallic silver in Jordan's hands. Now there's a difference. Holmes is wearing hers, and they are barely discernible to the degree that I couldn't even tell if they were AJ 2009s. But Jordan is holding his out proudly. What does that tell us? A lot, actually. Disability writer Thomas C. Weiss asserts, "Good images of disability and well-produced ads are designed to promote brand loyalty while making a product more popular." The purpose of using Holmes was not to sell shoes. That's Jordan's purpose. The purpose of Holmes was to make the brand popular. By making her disability more recognizable than the supposed focus of the ad, we can see that in this advertisement, 2 products are being sold: the sneaker and inclusivity. I can hear my comment section filling up about it now. No, Hannah, she inspired the shoe. That's why she's there. And I agree with you. She should be there. But look at the color blocking. Her black shoes almost blend in with the black flooring. But you know what doesn't blend in and is stark against that white background? Her prosthetic leg. Project researcher at Abo Academy University, Carolin Ahlvik-Harju, explains this by writing, "The normalcy narrative as the dominant narrative hinders counter-narratives to be equally important in culture. Rather than caring about Holmes's face or even the shoe, our eyes are quickly drawn to her abnormal prosthetic leg. In order to be inclusive, Nike could have done different color blocking or have her hold the shoe like Michael Jordan. Unfortunately, these weren't done. Despite Nike's steps to be inclusive in terms of disability representation, Holmes was not incorporated properly to make the advertisement seem completely cohesive and non-exploitative. Air Jordan was not the best representation of disability because they tried but didn't completely succeed. But please have hope for our next 2 examples. Now we're looking at the company Asos from the United Kingdom. Chloe Ball-Hopkins is wearing the jumpsuit that she helped to design. Per the article, History of Asos Fashion Facts, Asos was created in 2000 as the company as seen on screen, where people could buy clothing that they had seen in TV shows and in movies. The company has moved on from recreations to original products and provided formal attire for many British Paralympic athletes at the 2016 Rio events and ceremonies. Unfortunately, that's the only other disability representation that I was able to find besides the jumpsuit, but let's discuss that further. British Paralympic athlete and BBC Bristol sports reporter Chloe Ball-Hopkins reached out to Asos after experiencing a dreary and wet festival in her wheelchair. Ball-Hopkins wanted to be kept dry and warm, but didn't want the clothing to be exclusively for people with disabilities. In her About section on her website, she describes the jumpsuit as something that was inclusive, not exclusive. The advertisement illustrates that. This is the photo set that was used most often and the pair that Ball-Hopkins actually shared on Twitter. Here we have 2 women modeling the jumpsuit in 2 different styles to share the versatility of the garment. The women are laughing and interacting with each other so that the image is cohesive and there's a relationship between the elements. There's a white background so that the pastel colors of the jumpsuit really stand out, and that is where the eyes are pulled automatically. Our eyes are not pulled to Ball-Hopkins' wheelchair. If it were being showcased, she'd be turned to the side with the wheels in full view. Here, especially in the second one, it's barely present. Through this photo set, Asos was defying and redefining normal by putting historically abnormal bodies in spaces usually restricted to normal bodies. Ahlvik-Harju asserts that our bodies and the stories we tell about them are shaped to fit the standard bodily forms and functions. Asos' story is different than our normal, so it's breaking the standard forms and functions of society. The jumpsuit is functional, and so is Ball-Hopkins' body and form. My opinion is consistent with others. GraceyRx tweeted, "At Asos leading the way. This is honestly the first time I've ever seen a disabled model in a normal setup, rather than a special one-off to gain attention. So happy my Asos addiction is fueling a forward-thinking, caring business. #equality, #disability rights." Rhiannon MCGX tweeted, "Thank you at Asos for giving us representation. It is so important disabled models are used and clothing can be adapted to individuals' needs." These sentiments show that by incorporating Ball-Hopkins in such a genuine and precise way, Asos is shifting the narrative to become more inclusive rather than exclusive. Our last campaign that we are going to look at is Australian Target's new season activewear spread from 2016 featuring Robin Lambert. Target's representation of people with disabilities is actually one of the things that inspired me to do this great project. One of the things that they have done is design and produce an adaptive wear line, which is a clothing line specifically for people with disabilities. The advertising campaign for this line featured model Jillian Mercado, whose muscular dystrophy requires the use of a wheelchair. Target also features people with disabilities in their in-store displays. Author Jamie Sumner documented this particular one on Instagram, writing, "Thank you at Target for this. It made my son smile and clap and sign for more, and so you have my whole heart. Keep it coming. #special needs, #special kids." So Target's representation isn't, pardon the pun, targeted to one specific demographic of gender, age, or ethnicity, but is becoming representative of disability as a whole. That representation reaches athlete Robin Lambert, who was featured in Australian Target's new season activewear spread from 2016 that we're analyzing today. Lambert was born with cerebral palsy and plays both wheelchair basketball and rugby. She models androgynous clothing and says that disability sports allowed her to connect with the disability community and realize what it means to be disabled. Lambert sees her modeling as an opportunity to normalize disability. In an interview, she says, "The media is a really powerful socialing agent. People learn from the world around them and from television, movies, and the internet." So let's look at Lambert changing normal. This image is different because it's part of a spread, so we get to see exactly how it was used. This is the most conflicting advertisement we're going to see today. So we have 3 images with women on this advertisement, and 2 are of Lambert. The smaller one is a close-up, and the larger one features her wheelchair. She's alone, which is fine because the other woman is isolated as well. The difference is that Robin got an introduction and a quote. Her quote reads, "As a para-athlete, I practically live in activewear. That's why I love Target's range. It's got me covered for the whole day, with plenty of options for working out and fashionable pieces that are perfect for busy days in between training sessions." After reading this is where I got concerned. If you take out the word para, this could be any athlete, which is good. That's normalization. But then why do we need that quote? Why was it necessary when the other model didn't need one to model the same clothing? Speaking of the other model, let's talk about the 2 women compared to each other. Here, we can truly see intersectionality, coined by law professor Kimberly Crenshaw, to describe the discrimination that occurs because of intersecting identities. Both women are thin and white. The only difference is their ability. Why is the model necessary when the spread is clearly about Lambert? Especially when you consider that Lambert is able to stand up. You see why this is so complicated. Sincavage et al. Tell us that it can be asserted that advertising sells values, images, and concepts of what is considered to be normal. The value Target is selling is obviously that this line is universal. But why show it in this way? And even if we don't know the why, we can figure out the effect that it creates, because as Foss tells us, once an image is created, it stands independent of its creator's intentions. Whatever target's intentions were are lost in the audience's comprehension. So the effect of the composition, the quote, and the different models is a sense of tokenism rather than normalism or inclusive representation. If Target wanted to create the idea of normal, they would have treated these women in the same way. They would have had them posed in ways that the tone feels similar. They would have given them both quotes or included no quotes at all. This is essentially a spotlight on Robin Lambert, which is fine, but a spotlight isn't normal. It's bright and starkly points out the differences. Athletes push their bodies to the limit to be better, to be the best. For Paralympic athletes, they face even more challenges and adversity to be better and to be represented fairly. Holmes, Ball-Hopkins, and Lambert are all accomplished women that were used for advertisements. Holmes and Lambert were used to promote brand inclusivity by putting them apart, by compositionally separating them, by focusing on the disability rather than the products. Ball-Hopkins, on the other hand, shines in her ad. She looks accepted, she looks happy, she looks normal. Remember, Sincavage et al. Explained that every time we see an advertisement, it has an impact on our consciousness. In the next video, we will analyze this impact through the advertising of swimwear and lingerie. I want us to be clear that if you represent bodies with disabilities at all, you are helping the normalization process. You are putting the bodies out there. But Nike and Target did not represent these women accurately, did not give them the respect that they deserve as humans rather than tokens. But good news, Asos did. So there is a right, representative, and respectful way to use models with disabilities. We just need higher expectations.